it is time to start planting things outside. I'm really excited about that. I decided to go ahead and get my boxes of seeds out. Yes, all the seeds. And I've already been working in the garden, so that's why I have dirt on my face, but hey. I couldn't remember what it was time to start. I know I'm a little bit behind. Normally I would be starting tomatoes and cucumbers and all those things. I would have started those about 2 weeks ago, but oh well, we're gonna start them now. So I was looking at my list today. I have all of my garden notes right here. And I kind of want to catch up. So I was looking at my March planting calendar. If you guys are interested in learning how to make a planting calendar of your own, whoops, I have a video on that. I'll leave it at the end of this video if you want to check that out. I want to get my tomatoes started. I know I need to start my cucumbers. So tomatoes will be planted outside, transplanted outside in a few months. We're not there yet. And then the cucumbers are actually going to be planted inside and then moved over to the greenhouse, and they will live in the greenhouse for their whole life. So I gotta get those done. It also is time to start the broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, any of those kinds of things for the garden outside. If you have a hoop house, you could start direct sowing cold crops like radishes, beets, kale, spinach, lettuce, those kinds of things. You can plant them under cover right now. I am gonna start planting those things outside. I might do some things like peas can go outside right now. Sunflower seeds can go outside right now. They're just gonna sit in the ground and they're gonna wait until it's warm enough. But I think with the spring we're having, I'm gonna go ahead and get those in the ground. Maybe today, maybe today. It's supposed to rain the rest of the week. And if I don't have to water, I try really hard to plant on a sunny day right before we get some rainy weather. So I think I'm gonna do that. And then I know there are some cold loving flowers that I wanna plant. This is one of the gardens. I think snapdragons could be planted outside right now. Baby's breath, bachelor buttons. Yeah, and there's some red sunflowers. So what I have learned to do in the garden is watch what comes up and when it comes up. So like sunflowers, the frost dates say you can't plant them until like no chance of frost. However, all the sunflowers that direct seed in my garden come up like a month or even more before that point. So I started, if I plant sunflowers, I started going ahead and getting them in the ground as soon as I can in the spring, just like when I do the peas. And I've had way better success with sunflowers, because before what would happen is they would not bloom until it would frost in the fall, and then I wouldn't get any sunflowers. So now I plant them almost 2 months earlier and I get blooms from usually beginning of July, and then I get them all the way through until the fall. Way funner. And for my flower loving daughter, having more flowers that she can cut and have fun with, the better. So I definitely want to get those out. If you're starting sweet potatoes, you need to get those slips going like as soon as possible. It is a little late. I was gonna do them this year and I decided not to. I'm gonna let that one go for the year, but I did get a whole bunch of regular white potatoes. So we'll have all those. Peas, dandelion, cosmos, dianthus, any of those types of things can go ahead and get started outside. And then also poppies. Poppies love cold weather and they will not germinate if it gets too warm in the spring. So I'm gonna get those in this week as well. And then I'm gonna try really, really hard to keep up on telling you what I'm planting when. And I feel bad that I wasn't able to get a video out in March for what I was sowing in the house, because I just didn't sow anything. I didn't plant anything. So we're gonna catch that up today. Before we get planting, I realized I should probably put out these tarps in the garden, because it's so much easier if you go ahead and do that before you're trying to plant, so you have your ground layers done. So I'm gonna explain this garden to you real quick. I have done full videos on how to set this garden up. I did it last fall if you want to check that out. but I'll explain it really quickly right now. This garden is called our cellar garden, and it combines the roost out method a little bit with the Paul Gauchy's wood chip method or back to Eden garden method, and a little bit of no dig, permaculture, all the things sort of mixed in one. But it's more like a market garden in the fact that it has the rows, and we only plant a handful of crops in this garden in order to get as much of a harvest as possible for ease, and so that volunteers can come in and help and not get overwhelmed with stuff like that. So what we do is we lay down a row of compost and old goat bedding, and then we lay down a row of wood chips. Now we're going to plant in this row, and we're going to walk in this row, and then next year or this fall we're going to flip it and put wood chips here and straw there, and we'll plant in a different row. This helps with crop rotation and all kinds of stuff. But the wood chip rows, I've decided I really don't want to be weeding my paths as much as possible. So we add in this tarp right here, which mostly we just use to walk on. I don't bury it, and then we pick it up every single fall. We bring it back in, and then we are able to put that back out every spring. So it makes it last a bit longer. And the purpose of that is keeping the weeds out. The water does go through it, so the garden still stays moist. And it also makes it so that this garden is actually a bit warmer than everywhere else. That black tarp is one of my secret weapons for being able to manage such a huge garden. And I've decided that this garden has now been in since 2020, and it has been such a productive space for us that we are actually moving this method out into the bigger garden and being able to basically produce a ton more vegetables for our farm without a ton more work. So yes, it does take time. Yes, it does take energy, and you have to plan it out a little bit better. So everything in this garden is planned out on paper, and I do it in the fall and the winter months. I take all my notes, all my pictures, and all my videos from the previous season and all of the previous seasons before, and kind of put it all together and make every single year a little bit better, a little bit better. So I'm gonna lay out these tarps, and then we can get to planting.
They're so fast.
We're using these contractors fabric and garden staples. They work pretty good, and yeah, they're rusty, but we reuse them.
I'm still recording. I wonder why there's a hole. Can I help put the thingies in the tarp?
Alright.
Are you filling?
Yep, these are those.
Yeah.
Top some in the middle, okay? Alright, you might be wondering, why do we have tarps with no holes? Tarps with holes. The reason for this is because some of our tarps we just use as walkways, and this tarp and that tarp we'll just walk on them. We're not actually going to plant in the tarps. We're going to plant along the side of the tarp. That still works to bring heat to those plants. So then this tarp is a little different. We're going to be planting squash in this row, and so the squash is actually going to get planted right inside these holes. Now, when you buy the right kind of weed barrier, this is an woven agricultural fabric. You can get it from Growers Solution. That's where I ordered mine from. It is not cheap. However, it lasts for such a long time that the cost kind of goes out over a few years, and it makes it totally worth it. And when you weigh the amount of hours of weeding I don't have to do because of this fabric, totally worth it. So in these holes, we're gonna go ahead and plant our bush varieties of squash, so zucchini and yellow crookneck and straight neck and those types of plants. And what's gonna happen is that we're actually gonna get a harvest. We have such a short growing season. So far, my shortest record growing season was June 24th, and then that was our last frost date, and then our first frost of fall was not in fall, it was in the summer, and it was August 18th. So not a very long time to grow things like corn and tomatoes and squash. So doing this actually makes those things possible for us, and it has worked so well. I've been able to get squash out of this particular garden 2 or 3 years in a row now using this fabric. So there is one trick to this that is very important, and I'll show you why. You've got to use some kind of burning tool. So ours, a handheld propane torch, works really great to burn these holes, because if you don't, you end up with troubles like this. The edges of this will fray when you cut it. So I'm gonna come along and I'm actually gonna burn this. Don't worry, the straw is super wet, so don't have to worry about catching it on fire, but we will have someone with a hose wetting this down as I am burning. This is a much easier 2-person job, so I'm just gonna keep working on getting this tarp put out. And like I said, we reuse these tarps. It'd probably be easier if I labeled them, but honestly, this garden is always changing, so it doesn't matter if I label them or not, because they're not always gonna go on the same rows from year after year. All right, I'm gonna finish this, laying out all the tarps in the rest of the garden, and then I will meet you back in either the house or the greenhouse. I haven't decided. We're gonna start some seeds together. One thing I forgot to mention real quick is that I did mess up my rows a little bit here. Part of that is because I don't make my garden plan until the winter time, and we actually laid out all of these rows in the fall, and I just did every other opposites to what I had before. But when I made my garden plan, I thought I had an extra row in here that I don't, because our garden was covered in snow, so I couldn't see it, but that's okay. We're just gonna end up planting in the wood chips as well as the straw, and squash is not gonna care. It's actually gonna be super happy because it really likes all the mulch that you can give it, because it needs a lot of food while it's growing, a lot of nutrients, and it also needs a lot of water. So this is not going to be a problem. And that is the best thing about making your paths out of straw and wood chips, is that you can plant in it. So it doesn't really matter if you have to change your plans a little bit. You can plant where you're walking, you can plant where you're growing. It doesn't matter. So this is half and half, not going to be a problem. Okay, I got that bed raked out. I moved those hoop houses off of there. I'm not actually sure where I'm gonna put those hoop houses yet. I may end up putting them out there where the chickens are for the corn, to get a head start, at least on some of the corn. And then I had my daughter help me rake out this side. This is going to be her special flower area. It's starting to get really hot out here, so I'm gonna put tarps on that. That's gonna be broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower this year. And then I think I'm gonna take this off and put on a hat, because I already got sunburned yesterday doing the raspberries, and I don't really want to do that again today. So I went to plant these Kelvin Wonder peas right here in this section, and then I remembered these. These are the Jerusalem Artichokes, which I thought I pulled all of them out of this bed last year, and it turns out I did not. So I'm gonna dig this section out of here, try to get them out completely. But that's the thing about Jerusalem Artichokes, is when you plant them, they do take over. So make sure you put them where you don't care if they keep coming up over and over and over. I have a few people who want some of these, and my plan was to put them in a raised bed, because I know that the voles will just eat them. So I want to get a good mother patch established, and then I'm going to start trying to put them in all kinds of places in the garden where I don't care and I can just leave them, and hopefully the voles will leave them alone. The other thought I had is, maybe if the voles really like them, I can use them as a sacrifice crop and kind of deter them away from other areas. So we'll see what ends up happening. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and see what's lying under the soil here. I'm already finding them. I only planted 3 wrinkly tubers, and it produced this huge amount, and then I actually already have another section. So it really doesn't take very much to get a Jerusalem artichoke bed started. I do want to try cooking these. I've never had them before, so if you have a great recipe, leave it in the comments for me. A gigantic clump. And some of these I'm noticing are a little bit rotted in here. I'm not actually sure when you're supposed to harvest them, but we're doing it now. There we go. So that's gonna go in the compost pile. These are our ones we can save. And now I'm gonna replant these chives back how they were. And try not to get any of these. Make a little trench. I'm actually gonna do 2 rows of peas. We'll scooch those guys. Even this out a little bit more. Crockett's Victory Garden, and he said, if you're stingy with your peas, they'll be stingy with you. Now, some people soak their peas overnight. You can certainly do that, and some people use inoculant on their peas. I've never done either of those things, and honestly, I like to make gardening as simple as possible, and if I don't just do it sometimes, I might not get it done. So maybe one day I'll soak my peas, but for now, I'm just planting them as they are. So here's the peas, and I'm gonna bury them about 1 inch under the soil. Maybe a little less. And that's it, pat it down. Make sure they're all covered. Pat it down. That's all there is to it. In the wood chip garden, what we do is we pull back the wood chips and then we make sure we get to the compost layer underneath of the, this layer, and then we're gonna plant in that and go ahead and, doesn't matter if you cover it with compost or if you cover it with wood chips. The key is do not mix your wood chips into the compost or the dirt layer, because it will rob your soil of nitrogen in the first year. Now, these wood chips have been breaking down for who knows how many years. I've had a pile sitting out there for a long time. We just keep adding to it. So they're definitely broken down. I'm not worried about them robbing nitrogen, but I still like to keep it as my top layer so that I don't get weeds growing in here. So what I'm gonna do is plant these tall telephone peas. Now, I love these. I've been planting these for most of the years I've been gardening. They grow super tall and they have huge pods. They're really wonderful. I don't know if Baker Creek still sells these. I did look this last year and they didn't have them available when I purchased seeds, so you could keep checking with them, but I really love these. So what I do is, these are purchased ones from a few years ago, but I saved my own seeds. So the only trouble I've had, and maybe you guys can help me with this, is when we have harvested these peas for the last couple of years, we get these little bugs in the peas, and I don't know what these bugs are, and I haven't been able to find them online, although I haven't really looked that hard, but they basically just eat all of the pea seeds. So we saved what we could this time, and if you guys know what bugs infest your peas, please leave it down in the comments for me. That would be awesome. So all I'm gonna do is sprinkle these in the furrow just like I did before. I'm gonna go all along both sides of this cattle panel, and it's gonna grow up and make a beautiful shady shelter for the kids to hang out in. You know, I do try not to get dirty when I come out here. I just can't help myself. So I went ahead, I made 5 trays of soil blocks. I think I'm gonna do flowers in this one with my daughter, tomatoes in that one, cucumbers in that one, brassicas in that one, and did I say tomatoes? Yeah, that's just an extra. I will be super thrilled if I can get these planted today. That's kind of my goal. I am super tired from all the work I've been doing outside in the garden, but it's coming along, and I am really happy to be able to get this greenhouse filled up with plants. The celery and the onion starts that we started a long time ago back in January together, they are moved out here officially full-time. They've been in this greenhouse, no heat, and they are thriving. This is the very first time I have ever successfully grown onion sets, and I am so, so excited. Thank you to everybody who offered me suggestions and helped me get to succeed in this new area. Finished planting the trays of seeds. We did tomatoes, cucumbers, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, assortment of different flowers, mostly for cutting. I'm going to find somewhere to put these. I have no idea where, but that about wraps it up for today. Thanks for joining.